My name is Olivia, and I'm 28 years old. I've been married to David for 5 years now. He's 30, and from the very beginning, he's been everything I could ask for in a partner. David is gentle and caring. He never raises his voice, never loses his temper, and he's always there when I need him most. When I'm sick, he stays by my side. When I'm tired, he cooks for me. He listens when I speak and respects every word I say. In so many ways, he's the perfect husband. But there's one thing that bothers me deeply. David doesn't earn much money. He works in construction, putting in long, exhausting hours under the hot sun. And at the end of each month, he brings home about $2,500. It's honest work, and he gives it everything he has, but it's just not enough for the life I want. I work too, and I make more than he does. My job pays me $5,000 a month, which means I'm the main breadwinner in our home. I can see it hurts David's pride, and sometimes I use that against him without even realizing it. I tell him constantly that he should start a business, that he should find a way to earn more. He always responds quietly, saying he doesn't know how, that he's not educated enough, that he's afraid of failing. His humility used to touch my heart, but lately, it just frustrates me. I look around at our small apartment with its worn furniture and faded paint, and I feel trapped. We don't have a car worth showing off. We don't have savings. We don't have the life I see other couples living on social media. So I started saying cruel things. I'd compare him to other husbands, telling him how other men buy their wives jewelry and take them on vacations. I'd point out that other men own businesses and drive nice cars and live in big houses. I told him more than once that he wasn't good enough, that he wasn't living up to what a husband should be. Every time I said these things, David would just stand there quietly, his eyes filling with a sadness I chose to ignore. He never defended himself. He never argued back. He just took my words and carried them like heavy stones. What made things worse was how David spent his income. Out of his $2,500, he sent $1,200 to his elderly parents who lived in the countryside and depended on him. That left only $1,300 for us, which barely covered our basic needs. I resented his generosity toward them. I felt like I should come first, like our future should come first. I told him this too, though less directly, and I watched the guilt build in his eyes. One evening, David came home much later than usual. I was angry and demanded to know where he'd been. He explained that he'd been searching for additional work, going from place to place, asking about job openings. My anger softened a bit when I heard this. I asked if he'd found anything, and he shook his head, but promised he wouldn't give up. I felt a flicker of hope. The very next day, David left before dawn. I woke to an empty bed and didn't see him again until well after dark. When he finally came through the door, exhaustion was written across his face, but there was also something else, a quiet determination. He told me he'd found a second job working nights at a restaurant downtown. It would bring in an extra $2,000 each month. I felt relieved and told him he'd done well. Finally, I thought things would get better. But they didn't get better. They got worse. David began working both jobs without a single day off. He'd leave our apartment before the sun rose and return long after it had set. He stopped eating proper meals. He stopped talking much. The light in his eyes began to dim, replaced by a constant weariness that made him look years older. I told myself this was temporary, that once we saved enough money, he could quit the second job and we'd be happy. I convinced myself I was being practical. Then one night, everything changed. David came home and I could immediately tell something was wrong. His face was pale and his hands were trembling. Before I could ask what happened, his legs gave out and he collapsed onto the floor. I screamed his name and rushed to him, my heart pounding with terror. He tried to reassure me, saying he was just tired, but his voice was weak and his eyes couldn't focus properly. I'd never been so frightened in my life. I somehow got him into a taxi and we rushed to the hospital. The doctor examined him and said he was suffering from severe exhaustion and malnutrition. His body had simply given up from being pushed too hard for too long. As I sat beside his hospital bed, watching him sleep with an IV in his arm, the full weight of what I'd done crashed down on me. This man had worked himself nearly to death trying to make me happy, trying to be the husband I kept saying he wasn't. He'd sacrificed his health, his peace, and his joy because I'd made him feel worthless. I started crying then, deep sobs that came from somewhere I didn't know existed inside me. When David's eyes fluttered open and he saw my tears, he actually smiled at me. He lifted his hand weakly and told me not to cry, calling me his love in that gentle way he always had. That made me cry even harder because I realized I didn't deserve his kindness. I'd been so focused on what we didn't have that I'd completely lost sight of what we did have. I held his hand carefully, afraid I might hurt him even with a touch, and I told him how sorry I was. I apologized for every harsh word, for every unfair comparison, for making him feel like he had to prove his worth to me. David didn't need to be wealthy to be a good husband. He didn't need to buy me gold or drive an expensive car. What he'd given me all along was something far more valuable. He'd given me his respect, his faithfulness, his unwavering support, and his complete love. Those things couldn't be bought with any amount of money. As I sat there in that sterile hospital room, listening to the beeping of machines and holding the hand of the man who loved me more than I'd loved myself, I understood something profound. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy the way David looked at me every morning. It can't buy the safety I felt in his presence, or the peace of knowing someone would always choose me, no matter what I did. Almost destroyed the most precious thing in my life, chasing after things that would never truly satisfy me. I leaned close to him and whispered that I loved him. David smiled, that same beautiful smile I'd fallen in love with years ago, and whispered back that he loved me too. In that moment, I made a promise to myself and to him. I would never again measure his worth by his paycheck. I would never again compare him to anyone else. I would love him for exactly who he was, because who he was had always been enough. Money matters in this world. That's true, but love matters infinitely more. And I finally understood that the richest woman isn't the one with the most possessions, but the one who recognizes the treasure she already holds.